Okay, here's what I did. I found my center line. I have my center marked. Hope you can see that. It's just a pencil line. Okay, then what I did is I kind of started looking at this. Now, what I came up with, this front point is 1.5 inches. My back point is right at 2.5. Now remember, you got a left and a right. So what I did was, and I cannot stress to you enough to be sure that you do a mock-up. In other words, build you, even once you've got everything done, take you some scrap and make you one of these and make sure it's looking like you want. Then I came in here, and with that dimension, I could measure it. I'm just going to go 1.5 inches. Now, the way I came up with mine was I just kind of sat here. I don't think I want one quite that big. I just kind of sat here and just kind of started sketching it a little bit, kind of roughing it in to where I thought it would look pretty good. Then I went to the bandsaw and I sawed it. Now I have one of those oscillating drum sanders. So once I got to this stage, I just bandsawed this out, then took my sander and just kind of smoothed all this up, and then I set it up in my door and said, yeah, I like that. That looks good. Wasn't hard. Okay? You got that? That's all I did. So don't complicate this, guys. Now, then here's what I came up with. Let me tap this together real quick. I'm going the wrong way. Turn it around. Need to pay attention to what I'm doing instead of what I'm going to do. That's one of the hard parts about filming. All right. So this is what I came up with. Now this is going to be my right door because I want my arc coming to the center. Now, we have to turn our focus on getting to the mullions. Before we do that, we've got to get this bead cut again, or this stick cut. So I'm going to go do that real quick, and then I'm going to show you what we did. I got a mistake, guys. Listen to them. I'm measuring the cabinet. I remember now. I'm at that 1.5 and 2.5. Add 3/8 to that. That was the beaded part. So the 1.5 and the 2.5 is actually going to be our finished front. So this is going to wind up being 1.5 and 3/8 is 1 7/8. I mean 1.5 and 3/8 is 1. This is going to be 1 7/8. This is 2.5 plus 3/8, so this winds up being 2 7/8. And the point I'm showing you I reference to was after the tenon cut is my long point, is my point from this point here and here to here. So we want to be 1 7/8, 2 7/8, so we get a finished after we do the cut, so that we wind up with the 1.5 and 2.5 after it's beaded. Got that? Okay. Now let me get set up and we'll do the mullions. Okay, guys, here comes a little bit of a tricky part. Our shaped piece that's up in the top, we gotta route what would be our stick profile on it. Now, before we do this, I want to show you this. If you elect to cut your tenons after you've done your stick, when you're doing this part to cut the tenons, save the off-fall from where you cut it out and use it. Now this is longer, so this is not the exact off-fall, but keep it so that on this end you can go flat. When you do this side, you're already going to have a flat surface. Now here's another thing you can do to handle what we're getting ready to do, and that is to keep yourself wider so that you have something to hold on to. Got that? I'm going to show you that. Now there's an issue that occurs. After the tenon's cut, when we come in here, if you look, see where this bearing is? This bearing is not going to allow, now this is just a piece of MDF for demonstration. This bearing is not going to have a bearing surface right here where this tenon is. And it's going to create us an issue. Let's take a look. Now this wasn't too bad, but notice what it did when we came off the bearing, when we came off of it, because there's nothing there's nothing to stop it. Okay, how do we handle that? Well, what I did, now the first thing you notice, this is a freehand routing and I've got a starter pin. The reason for that starter pin, it gives me something to get a good hold on and come in. Now I want you to look very carefully what I did. I took me 2 scrap pieces and I've cut them to give me a bearing surface. Okay, if you don't want to do that, and you also see what I did because I got something to hold on to. You can rig it up any way you want. But the thing of it is if you're not going to do something like this, stop before you get all the way to the end. Then you can just take a little file or rasp and finish it out. Not that difficult. But all I did was make a call or put it in a tenon, and went ahead and tenoned it in so that I could do it. Now, one of the cool things about the arc is that you usually, for whatever reason, you don't get a lot of tear out. Just go easy. But you can leave it a little bit fat or wide, cut close to your line, route it, then come back, sand it to the line, and rerun it. Just like we were doing, except that we've got to sand the profile. Got that? Here we go. Now, as you can see, I don't have any tear out in my ends. Okay, it worked nice. I just threw a staple in it. And that's another reason for making sure that your tenons are fitting snug. And we have a profile cut. And just to make sure you understood what I just told you, if you had bands, let's say you bandsaw this, say a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch from your line, now you would go back and either sand it to the line or have you a pattern made that you could use like our spiral bit or something and router cut it to the line, then run it again if you're having a tear out issue. Okay? Now, The same thing applies. If we leave this wider, you're going to be better off to actually put this in the door frame and clamp it together and then do a cross and then cut it instead of trying to cut this on the table saw. You can, but you got to index off this side to narrow it up. You got that? Crystal gave me one of them funny looks. If this was the table saw, I can draw it out and I can bring it in and I can make my cut letting this piece go to the left of the blade instead of trying to rig it up and cut it this way. Got it, guys? Now what we have to do is we have to cut our vertical mullion to match this profile. Now, the first thing to do is make sure you're square. So what I did, this is my center line, and this piece is 1 1/4, and I've got a center line on that. All right, again, make sure you're square, and you can do that by measuring from one side to the other. Draw it on. Now, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to keep this piece a lot longer than what you're going to need, because you may have a little bit of trial and error here. All right, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to the bandsaw and I'm going to saw that to the line. Then we're going to go back to the coat bit and we're going to coat it. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this guard because I need you to see this. All I'm going to do is I'm going to set this as close to my angle as I can. I'm good. Now here's what I want you to notice. We've got a sweep to this. Remember that bearing inside of there? It now becomes our friend. Watch. See it pull in? Did you see that pull in? Now here's my issue. Right here and right here, I'm touching a little bit. Now I realize how do you get past this stuff? So what I'm going to do is come back in. Stay right there. I'm going to get the piece and check my fit. Now, if I need to, you see what I did? I'm just dancing it. See what I look like here. All right, see I got a little too much gap. Now what I can do is I can just take a piece of sandpaper or a rasp and do this, do it again until I've got a perfect fit. All right, just fiddle with it a little bit. Let me show you that. All right, so what I got to do is I got to take a little bit off. Now, I don't have to take it off up here. I only have to take it off the tenon a little bit. So I'll do it, test it, until I've got just what I want. Now I'm going to explain this. This is an extreme. Normally on something like that, when you're making this sweep in here, if you come down and instead of turning it so much here, you kind of keep just a little angle here and then turn from that up, it's a lot easier to do. But we're not trying to do this show to do it easy. Okay, now this is just a bandsawing line. Now you can see right here, I've got a little bit of a gap there, so that means I'm tight on this end and I'm tight on that end. So all I got to do is just touch up a little bit on these ends and smooth up that tenon just a little bit. I go into this knowing it's going to take me a couple, 2 or 3 passes to get exactly what I want. Now the reason I'm smoothing up the tenon now instead of doing it before is now the only thing I got to do is that little 1/4 inch tenon. I don't have to work with the whole shooting match. Touch it up a little bit. All right, I'm in there good enough. I'm tight. Because here's the other thing that's going to happen, is we're going to be reducing the width of this. So in reality, it's just going to be very little up here that's going to be touching right in there. As long as we're pretty good, we're okay. Now what I want to do is I want to go and fit it to the bottom of it. So let's go do that. Okay, make sure everything's in, nice and square, as it should be. Fit it. Make sure you're nice and tight up here at the top. And usually that'll involve taking a clamp and pulling it, and make sure you're square and tight in here. Now you can measure all this. Then all I do is set this piece right to the edge of my door. Go across it. Make sure I'm square. Oops. Now I have to add for my tenon, which is 3/8 of an inch. Let me go cut that real quick. All right, now we're to the point, guys, we're going to be working with narrower pieces. You see the clamp? Got to be there. Remember when we did this end, you could see how the bit wanted to pull it in? It's going to do the same thing on these narrow ends. Okay? It can try, but now there again, that also says that's why you want that bearing dead in line with your fence. See, all we did here was we had our this is just a safety thing. We had our miter slide a little bit loose so that because of this space, so we could come in here, basically do the reverse of what we did over there when we cut the top rail, where we freeformed it. We're just doing this in a smaller area and making sure. I wouldn't want to do this like this. I just wouldn't. That's also the reason for cutting the tenon first. Okay, because that could give us an issue. If it did, just like we did the ends on the top rail, just like we put a piece in here, we would need to put a piece in here to keep us from getting tear out. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the stick part of this to 1.25 inches. Then I'm going to go to the table saw. I'm going to take an 1/8 inch off each side, and I'm going to run it again. So what I want you to see is me running this narrow piece again. All right. This is where this can get a little dicey because you're pretty close in here. And when we get to running those little short mullions, I want you to see my jig. All it is a piece of MDF. See the notch? See the stop? And all it does is it sits down over like this, okay, and I can put it through. Ready? Good to go. All right, fitted up a door. Now, you're going to notice something. I'm just a little bit short here. So that's the reason I'm telling you always do a mock-up to make sure you get it right. I could probably go ahead and go with this. And the reason is I'm going to be trimming it back to create my gaps when we finalize it. That gives us our basic door. Now comes another one of them fun things. Now, you may ask, well, couldn't you just go ahead and put a 2 1/4 piece across the top? Sure you could. Not an issue with that at all. If you do that, you kind of get a nice little country look. You know, this gives it a little bit more of a formal look, a little French look, whatever, French country. So, you know, it's all in what you want to do. And, you know, obviously, you know, just putting a straight piece across here is pretty straightforward. That's, you know, not difficult. But I wanted to do this. Number one, I like the look. And number two, we didn't start out doing this show to do all the easy stuff. So this is a way of doing this. Okay, now we get to do those wonderful little short, narrow cross pieces. Now they can look intimidating, but they're not. I'm actually going to go ahead and get one of the doors out of the cabinet. If everything don't fall apart on me here. Here we go. All right. You know, the hardest part about doing these is getting the length correct. Because if you get it too long in here, then you're trying to push your door apart. If you get it too short, you got gaps. Here's the quick, easy way to do it. take you some little pieces of just thin stock 1/4-inch plywood or whatever. I want you to watch this. Set it in. Put your center piece in. Put your other one in. And simply check to make sure that you're coming flush with the tenon at the top and that this is down tight. When you're flush here, you're good. You now have this length correct. Instead of wrestling the door around. Is it wrestling or wrestling? Having to mess with the thing. You know? So it's just a little play in there to make sure you got everything just like you want. Because it doesn't take much to get off. Okay? Now, once you have your length set, then we do it exactly like we did the center one, except we have to deal in shorter lengths. So what I'm going to do is I rip everything. I just rip some stock to 1 1/4. Now here's a hint. You're going to need 8 of them in this particular cabinet. Do 10 or 12. Because you can get a little chip out or tear out or whatever. You're not using a lot of material, so make sure you do some extras. Let's do a couple, take a look at it. Now before I do this, I imagine you noticed that on the other one, on the popper, I was having an issue getting this. It wasn't clearing my little dust collection thing, and that's just because that popper was a lot thicker. Same thing, we're using that jig again. Then it's off to the table saw. Take an 1/8 inch off each side. Get them down to 1 1 inch. Run them again. We're ready to go. That's how hard it is. Now let's look at gluing it up. All right, guys. Before we go too far, we're going to do a dry fit. Whoops. Because this is the way we're going to need to glue this up. We're going to stack it. But that can get a little messy and it can get a little difficult. So we're going to look at a way of doing that so it's not quite so messy. And so we make sure we land where we need to. Get in there, boy. Just want to get together, get up to the case. This would probably be a lot easier laying down, but then you don't get to see me have to fiddle with it a lot. All right, forget it. We're going to the case. All right, and one of the things I did is I went through oh yeah, just so you know, let me give you a couple quick measurements. My cross piece in here with each one of these at 2 1/4 came in at 13 3/8. My little cross piece here, it came in at 6 9/16. And my height here was about 36 1/8. What I can see, 36 1/16, 36 1/8. Again, that doesn't mean that's what yours is going to be. Okay, they can vary a little bit. So what I did is each one of these pieces, as we denoted out, these are 9 7/8. And that puts me, where I want to land in this is I want to wind up trying to get this shelf as close to centered behind this mullion as I can, and try to have these 4 panes of glass the same size. If I were doing a straight top, then I would try to do it to where, again, they were all the same. That's what we want. Now, you see these little sticks can make a big difference in getting everything in position, but we're in the case. So what can we do here? Here's what I like to do. I like to take, and I'm going to invent me a piece of glass. I'm just a little bit over 6 5/16. All right, I better get up here because that's not. All right, I'm just a little bit over 6 1/4. See, this one's just a little bit one way or the other because it can move in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take me some scrap pieces of plywood, 1/4 inch plywood, and I'm going to make me some windows, if you will, that are going to fit in this perimeter right here. Make sense? So I'm going to rip them. We'll be right back. Y'all know why I'm doing this? I had these stuck up in there and every one of them come falling, just like dominoes all over the place. Well, now that we're back on the camera, you get the point. A whole lot easier laying down than it is standing up. So, by making this up, when we go to put this together, this automatically keeps everything straight, flat, where we want it. We don't have any issues. Now, one of the things we're going to do before we glue it is we will come in here and we will mark us an alignment point. Okay? And we want to do that, and we want to try to keep our mullions oriented. And the reason for that is that when we've got this turned up and we start gluing, we don't want to be getting glue all over the place. And I know you're ready. I am too. But as fate has it, when we come back next time, that's when we glue them up. Now, to understand a little bit about what's going to happen, what we're going to do is after we've done this, then we're going to come in here with a rabbiting bit with a 3/8 inch cut depth. And that bearing on that rabbet is going to ride right along the edge of this bead. And we're going to rabbet out the back of that for our glass. Now, before you get too crazy in all of this, you need to check with your glass cutter to see if they're able to cut something like this. We're fortunate ours is. Then we're also going to have to, the other thing we're going to have to look at is how, when we rabbet this out, because the bit's round, each corner in the back will have a rounded area. You can chisel it out. There is an easier way, and I'm going to show that to you. But again, check with your glass company to see if he can do that. And you'll see more about that next time. All right, guys. We're getting there. Hang with us.